Hi, this is Monica from Huckleberry Mountain Botanicals School of Herbalism. Lindy is sitting right here. She's going to help me get connected to the prepared homestead and follow comments or anything like that. So please comment, please say hello at least, and let me know if you've used pineapple weed before, as we're talking about that today. Hi, Sean, my faithful follower. I can always count on you to show up. Not so some other people though, so. Oh, and there's Lindy now. Okay, so let's start talking about pineapple weed. I know it's a really strange name, but the reason it's named that is because it really does have an almost pineapple-y smell to it. It's kind of like the combination of chamomile and pineapple blended together. Okay, so it's distinctly possible you have it growing around you and you may not have ever noticed it. It's kind of one of those plants that generally doesn't grow, hi Teresa, very tall, and so it can be quite inconspicuous. Oh, I love your waves. so many waves. And you know, and honestly, when it's growing in kind of rougher places, which it does tend to grow, and we'll talk about that in a second, a lot of times it won't get taller than about this height. So it's real small, and it can form clumping, and so it'll have these kind of thickets of this green stuff, and when you step on it, it releases the aroma, which is so beautiful and nice. So where would you find it? Unfortunately, pineapple weed is generally found in places that you wouldn't want to wildcraft or forage it. It's kind of frustrating because it loves disturbed soil, it loves compact soil, it will grow in sidewalk cracks, it'll grow in driveways. We have a ton of it growing out where we have a gravel area. It's not a driveway, but it's still kind of gravel. And it just is totally inappropriate for any plant. Mullein grows great there. I have some wild lettuce growing. Wild chamomile is growing there. And lamb's quarters, things like that. Those sort of pioneer plants really is what they are. They come in and they're breaking up the soil and trying to do their job. It does wonderfully there. Unfortunately, you'll also find it at places like parks or baseball fields, those types of things where there's a lot of compact soil, and they're close to, because they're close to those things, that they're also getting runoff from parking lots and from roads. They're possibly being sprayed because if they're trying to maintain and cut down on those, then there would be some toxic stuff there. In parks, you might be dealing with poop or potty from the doggies.
Does it grow in Texas?
Does it grow in Texas? I think so. I would need to check that out to know for sure, but it really grows so many places. It's really one of those pretty common weeds that you would find almost anywhere. Like I said, what?
Leela says pineapple weed doesn't have petals.
Correct. It does not have petals, and that's its Latin name, its botanical name is Matricaria discoidea, or discoidea, however you want to say it. And I always remember that and think, okay, Matricaria means it's related to the chamomile, because chamomile, the regular German chamomile, is Matricaria recutita. And so it's in that same family, but it only has the disc flower. So when you're talking about the Asteraceae family, which we are, I go over all of this in my holistic herbal course, my program, because we go into botany and flower identification and things like that. But when you look at the aster family, they have the disc flower and the ray flowers. And this technically does have these tiny, tiny little, like it just sort of decorates the edge of it. But it's primarily just this disc flower. And let me see if I can get it close enough for you to see. It's got that nice green kind of bulbous top there, and it kind of is reminiscent and even looks a little bit like a miniature pineapple. right? It's kind of cool. The easiest way to identify it is to squeeze those flowers and take a sniff. It smells so good. So I'm going to show you some lookalikes here so you can tell the difference. First of all, remember, it is not going to grow super tall. So if you have a plant, I'm going to bring out this one here next to it, that is taller like that. This one is an amazingly tall one right here. This is the tallest I've seen recently. Usually they're fairly short like this, and they grow in clumping. If you see a tall one like this, it kind of is an indicator that it's probably not going to be the pineapple weed.
Kana says hi.
Hi, Kana. But oh, I have to listen later, sorry. Oh, no worries, Cheryl, thanks for coming. Now this one is kind of obvious. I pulled it so that you could see that this one has petals. However, there are some small buds here that are not open yet, and it's easy to mistake them for pineapple weed. The biggest difference here, besides the height, because that's not always indicative, sometimes these will be shorter, sometimes these will be taller. The leaves are similar. I would say it's not quite as bushy, but again, if you're not real familiar with botany and identification, that might be a little confusing. The best way to do it is to pinch this little thing and smell it. And by the way, ew, it does not smell good. This is mayweed chamomile. This is not the same thing. Do not use this. And like I said, you squeeze it, you're gonna be able to smell it. It does not smell good. It is not like chamomile. It is not like pineapple weed. It's not good at all. The other one that it can be mistaken for, most of the time does not grow in the wild, but there might be some garden escapees, is the German chamomile.
Hi, Shamra.
Hi, Shamra. Glad you could join us. And so this German chamomile, I want you to see the difference. All of these do have these alternating leaves on the way up, but this one is a lot less bushy. This is the German chamomile, the Matricaria recutita, and it will eventually open up. When you look at these two, they are very similar to each other. And it's easy to mistake them, but when you look at their leaves, the Mayflower chamomile, the stinky weed, is a little more bushy in the leaf section than the German chamomile. That's a pretty good indicator. The German chamomile almost looks a little anemic leaf-wise than the Mayflower. And in the German chamomile, you're basically using those flowers. Whereas on your pineapple weed, it's kind of awesome because pineapple weed is very similar to the same uses you would have for chamomile. So if you don't have space for an herb garden or you don't have German chamomile growing, go out and look for some of this because this will be basically a replacement. It's not as powerful, which also makes it a great substitute for children. Chamomile is really flexible for kids too. But this is a great alternative, and it is sedative. It's also carminative, so that helps ease the stomach and get some of that gas, expel the gas out. It is also a bitter. If you let it sit long enough, it can pull out some of that bitter constituent. And if you're really looking for it to act as a bitter, I think I'm getting bugs on me from these flowers. I didn't rinse anything. Then you want to use a lot of plant to really pull out those bitters into the water. If you don't let it sit long enough and you don't use enough plant, you're never gonna get that bitter taste and you're gonna be like, this isn't really bitter. It is bitter, I promise it is. You just have to use enough. And so it's carminative, it's a bitter, it also is sedative. It's not super powerful sedative, but enough to calm kind of an irritated mind or an irritable child or whatever. If you wanna use it in the evening, it's very nice and calming, and even during the day. You can also use it as a replacement for chamomile in teething situations. So if you have a teething child, making a nice tea and soaking a rag in there, wringing it out, stick it in a plastic bag and put it in the freezer, and then let them chew on that, and it will release some of the pain relieving constituents onto the gums and calm them down a little bit. I'm trying to think, sedative, stomach, a bitter, and pain relieving. I mean, all of those, works great for colic even and things like that. So when I'm making a tea, if I found something, and like I said, find it in a clean spot, you guys. Don't get so desperate to forage or to wildcraft that you end up pulling from places you shouldn't be pulling from. If it's close to a road, if it's close to a parking lot, if it's anywhere it's been sprayed, if it's in a construction site, sadly, all of these grow in all those places really, really well. Places where it's frequently been urinated on or defecated on, you do not want those plants. I know this came from a clean area, and so I'm not going to worry about cleaning it, but if you aren't sure about, like, oh gee, maybe something peed on it, I don't know, go ahead and give it a wash before you use it. I'm not real picky about that. So the parts that are usable on here are the leaves and the flowers. I showed you the other day about picking the flowers off and using them in a salad. They are so delicious. They really, really are. They have a nice flavor to them. Now, making a tea, technically, tea is really in reference to the black tea, green tea, the Camellia sinensis plant. But we always say, herbal tea, and technically that's not what it is. And I go into detail on that in my herbal program as well, just kind of talking about what the differences are and how to go about making a good medicinal herbal tea, or tisane, which you can call it that as well. So I'm pulling all these off. This is called garbling. I'm just going to pull these flowers and these leaves off of here. And if you get a little bit of the stem, that's not a big deal, but I'm not going to go chopping the stem and sticking it in. That's not going to be the best part. Even the leaves smell good. The whole plant really just smells delicious. One of my students just mentioned earlier that she has a big patch of it growing right outside of her front door, and just walking on it is like, it just releases that really nice scent. We have a ton of it growing in our backyard, so we don't step on it a lot. But man, it really does smell good. So I'm gonna go ahead and put about 2 tablespoons in here. This is not a super strong tea, okay? So if you're trying to make, I would even recommend if you're making something for teething, or you're making something specific for like a medicinal, I would at least double, possibly triple this amount if you're using fresh. If these are dried, which you can do it on a screen. I'm gonna give you a hint here. If you're gonna dry these, dry them on the stems. Go out, just trim the stems right off. You can do what's called the haircut, just kind of grab and chop, and then take it and lay it out on an old screen from a window. Keep it out of the sun, keep it somewhere where it's getting a little bit of airflow. It doesn't have to be like a fan or anything like that, but a little bit of airflow, so don't stick it in closets or closed rooms, and allow it to dry. When it is dry, it is super easy to do this and just take the leaves, the dried leaves and the dried flowers right off the stem. Super, super simple. And it can be done in large amounts. So if you have a really good stash somewhere on your property or somewhere else that you know is clean, go out there and chop it. It can be used anytime during the summer. Always look for the healthiest plants, not the yellowy ones or the kind of sickly ones. Get the nice healthy ones and pull those in and dry them. And then you'll have them for use in the winter. All right, so I'm gonna take that 2 tablespoons, I'm putting them in my cup here. I love this mug. I got this, Sean bought this for me in Japan. It has this little insert. Japan really knows how to make stuff to make tea. That's all I'm gonna say about that. It has this wonderful little insert, and then it has a little fitted lid that goes right on top, which you will need in order to keep those essential oils in the water. Don't just pour the water on and then let everything fly away and out. Okay, once you get the hot water in there, you want to cover it. And this is hot water just off the boil. You don't want it to be absolutely simmering, but not cold either. Although you could make a cold infusion with this as well. It would just need to sit longer. But this is barely off the boil. And I just want to, oh, you guys can't really see it. There's all these little buttons right here. This is probably one of the most convenient teapots I've had. It has like green tea, white tea, delicate, oolong, boil for black tea, and then herbal tea to set it to a 200 degrees. So you can have, you know, you have your 185, 160, 175, you know, the specific levels that you could have, or just heat up water, let it come slightly off the boil, and then you can use it in your herbal tea, and that's perfectly fine. I'm gonna let this sit for about 20 minutes. Yes, that's a long time. But one thing I want you to really understand is that when you're using tea for actual medicine, you need to let it steep a little longer. If you are just trying to enjoy a cup of tea and you want that little delicate flavor, then fine. Let it steep 5 to 7 minutes and then take it out. And you know, that in itself is a therapy, right? Just sitting down and inhaling the aroma and the warmth and just the connection that you're having with the plants drinking that cup of tea. But if you're trying to get some of that medicinal stuff, then you need to make a little more effort and you need to get it in there, use a little bit more. Like I said, in this case, if I was using this medicinally, I probably would have put in at least 4 tablespoons, possibly 6. Really just put it in there, put the water in, and let it sit for a good 20 minutes. If I'm trying to get the bitters out, probably 30 minutes, I would let it sit. So, and of course you could do a cold infusion with this as well. You know, just put it in a bag, let it float above, and let it sit for 4 to 8 hours, or a sun infusion. Stick it out in the sun for the day. You know, make yourself a really delicious sun tea, and that keeps all those essential oils in the water because it never comes to a boil, so they're never boiling off or floating away. All right, so that is it for our pineapple weed, and I will be back tomorrow to, I think I'm doing a drink. We're gonna do a beverage because I'm getting ready to hit my weekend. We're gonna be celebrating our 28th anniversary. So I'm gonna get going, and I will see you tomorrow at 6:30. Please come and say hello, and I look forward to talking to you. Until next time, health and joy.